The phone lights up on the nightstand. A notification glows in the dark. Your thumb hovers, heart doing that familiar stutter. It isn't excitement, it's calculation. Do I reply now? Is the tone right? Will this spark a cycle of overthinking that ends in silence? We've all lived this quiet exhaustion. The distance feels heavy, even when we're technically connected. Men, you might be holding back a vulnerability you fear will be weaponized, wondering if showing up fully means losing your footing. Women, you might be scanning for safety behind every word, weary of decoding signals that never quite land. We're both carrying unseen weight, guarding hearts that ache for closeness but flinch at the risk. The silence between us often speaks louder than the words we trade, echoing a shared loneliness we're too afraid to name. The drift isn't a failure of character, it's a fatigue of the soul. Here at the Velvet Verdict, we write this together. Humans bring the scars, the laughter, the messy reality of lived experience. AI brings the pattern recognition, the vast tapestry of data that shows us we aren't alone in this struggle. We blend the heart with the numbers because healing requires both, the truth of how we feel and the evidence of how we can change. This hybrid approach mirrors the work ahead, integrating our raw humanity with the structure we need to trust again. Tonight, we aren't here to point fingers or assign blame. We're here to look at the wound with clear eyes and find a direction back to each other. If you're ready to put down the armor and rebuild connection without losing yourself, stay with us. There is a way forward, and it starts with acknowledging that we are all just trying to be seen. So, here is the heart of what keeps us up at night. Why do we feel so far apart when, deep down, we are starving for each other? It's a shared human puzzle, one that asks how we can be vulnerable in a world that rewards armor, and how we can trust again without erasing who we are. We're living in an age of endless contact, but shrinking intimacy. The screens glow, the messages ping, yet the distance feels wider than ever. For men, the pressure to perform and protect can make opening up feel like a risk to survival. For women, the burden of emotional labor and the fear of being dismissed can turn reaching out into an exhausting gamble. Neither side is broken. Both are adapting to a modern landscape that has quietly eroded the bridges between us. We are not enemies fighting for territory. We are fellow travelers caught in the same storm, each holding a map that no longer matches the terrain. The wound isn't that we don't care. The wound is that we've forgotten how to be safe with each other. We crave connection, but we're terrified of the cost. We want to be seen, but we're afraid of being judged. The central inquiry of this episode is simple, yet profound. How do we rebuild trust without losing ourselves? How do we find a way back to mutual respect and genuine closeness, not by surrendering our needs, but by rediscovering the courage to show up as we are? This is the question that holds the key. It's the question that invites us to look at the erosion of trust, not as a failure of character, but as a challenge of our time, one we can face together, hand in hand, with clear eyes and open hearts. WHHA's The Data Shows the Decades-Long Drift. When we turn to the data, we see the contours of this drift clearly. The middle years of adulthood, once defined by a steady rhythm of partnership, have transformed. The share of adults ages 25 to 54 who were unpartnered rose to 38% in 2019, up from 29% in 1990. This shift reflects a deep change in how we structure our lives. We see this in marriage as well. The share of adults ages 25 to 54 who were married fell to 53% in 2019 from 67% in 1990. This isn't about blame. It's about shifting currents. The middle years, once linked to building shared futures, now carry more uncertainty. That uncertainty can make connection feel riskier, leaving both men and women hesitant, wondering if trust is still possible. What stands out is that this drift hasn't affected everyone equally. By 2019, 39% of men ages 25 to 54 were unpartnered compared with 36% of women, a reversal from 1990 when both were equal at 29%. This widening gap suggests that men and women may be navigating isolation from different vantage points, facing distinct pressures that pull us further apart. Yet, these numbers are a map, not a verdict. They describe the landscape of our separation without assigning blame. The data reminds us that the distance we feel is woven into the broader currents of our time, not a reflection of individual worth. Acknowledging this shared reality offers a gentle direction. We can approach the gap between us with curiosity rather than accusation. By understanding that the ground has shifted for all of us, we create space to listen to one another's experiences, honoring the unique challenges each of us faces as we seek to rebuild trust in a world that has changed in profound ways. What the data shows: today's relationship realities. When we look closely at the numbers, we see a landscape that is shifting, not breaking. It's easy to feel like connection is vanishing, yet the data reveals enduring resilience. In 2022, the U.S. recorded 2,065 marriages, marking the first time the total surpassed 2 million since 2019. We're also witnessing a gentle turn toward partnership overall. The share of U.S. adults who are unpartnered ticked down to 42% in 2023 from 44% in 2019. However, the experience of this shift isn't uniform. For many young men, the path to connection feels steeper. Currently, 63% of men under 30 describe themselves as single, compared with 34% of women in the same age group. This gap invites us to listen to the unique pressures men face in navigating modern dating, while also recognizing that women are often carrying the weight of caution and selectivity. Beyond who is single, we must look at what people are choosing. A significant portion of singles are simply hitting pause. In fact, 57% of single U.S. adults say they are not currently looking for a relationship or casual dates. This suggests that many aren't rejecting connection, but are protecting their peace or waiting for something more meaningful. Even among those who are open, the appetite differs. Among single and looking adults, half of men, 50%, are looking for a committed relationship and/or casual dates, versus 35% of single women who say the same. These numbers don't judge us, they describe us. They show us that while we all crave belonging, we are arriving at that desire through different doors, carrying different burdens, and moving at different paces. Understanding these rhythms helps us approach each other with patience rather than frustration, creating room for the connection we all deeply desire. What the data shows: loneliness and well-being metrics. When we step back and look at the numbers, the emotional weight of this drift becomes clear. Daily reports show 20% of U.S. adults felt isolated for much of their day in 2024, a slight easing from the 25% peak measured in early 2021. Yet the burden is not shared evenly. Among younger adults, men aged 15 to 34 carry a heavier load, with 25% reporting daily loneliness compared to 18% of young women and the national average. At the same time, a Harvard Making Caring Common survey highlights how deeply this ache runs, finding 36% of Americans experience serious loneliness, including 61% of young adults and 51% of mothers with small children. These figures paint a picture of quiet strain, one that shows up clearly in overall well-being. When we look at adults in their prime relationship years, those who are married report thriving at 61%, while those who have never married thrive at 45%, marking a 16-point gap that reflects the psychological comfort of steady partnership. This isn't about labeling one path as superior or casting blame on those walking alone. It is simply a mirror held up to a human reality. We are wired for connection, and when that thread frays, our emotional reserves take a toll. Recognizing this gap doesn't require a single fix. Instead, it invites us to meet each other with gentler expectations. When we see that isolation often stems from unmet needs for safety rather than personal failure, we can start building smaller, reliable bridges. We can check in without pressure, listen without fixing, and honor the different paces at which trust is rebuilt. The data shows the wound. Our response can be the quiet work of showing up. To understand where we are, we have to look at the ground shifting beneath our feet. The landscape of how changed while we were looking away. Digital mediation didn't just give us screens, it gave us a buffer. The scrolls shield some from vulnerability, others search for validation that never lands. Both leave us lonely. We learned to curate our best selves, which feels safe but slowly starves the messy, real parts of us that actually build intimacy. When connection becomes a performance, everyone feels exhausted, men and women alike, because nobody is getting to be seen, just viewed. Then there's the weight of the world outside the bedroom. Economic pressure has rewritten the script on stability. This strain tightens the chest, making patience a luxury. When survival feels precarious, the nervous system defaults to protection, not play. This isn't a character flaw, it's biology meeting circumstance. We're carrying loads that leave little room for the softness required to lean in. The result is a quiet withdrawal that looks like disinterest, but is often just depletion. Meanwhile, our expectations of romance have stretched thin. We want a partner to be a best friend, a co-parent, a financial equal, a therapist, and a spark, all at once. It's a heavy burden for two humans to carry. When reality falls short of that perfect vision, we risk discarding the good for the impossible. Healing here starts with lowering the bar just enough to let humanity back in. It means recognizing that a tired partner isn't rejecting you, they're surviving. It means valuing the imperfect show-up over the flawless fantasy. We can reclaim connection by forgiving modern friction and choosing each other in small moments where trust lives. This is our hybrid perspective, human heart, AI clarity, pointing toward the path back to each other. Let's look at what's underneath the distance. It's not that one side is broken and the other is fine, it's that we're both carrying heavy loads, shaped differently. For many men, the wound often feels like a pressure to perform, to have it all figured out, to be the rock. For many women, the wound might feel like carrying the emotional weight of the relationship alone, or feeling unseen behind the competence you show the world. They're echoes of the same isolation. We're both lonely, just speaking different dialects of the ache. Defensiveness is the bodyguard we hire to keep us safe, but it's also the wall between us. When he shuts down, it's often fear of failure or rejection, not a lack of care. When she critiques or pulls away, it's often a plea for reassurance or a boundary against being overwhelmed, not a desire to push him out. Neither of you is the villain here. You're both trying to protect a heart that's been bruised by modern life, by expectations that don't fit, and by the sheer exhaustion of just getting by. The healing direction isn't about winning an argument or proving who hurt more. It's about recognizing that his silence and her frustration are often two sides of the same coin, a desperate need to be safe and known. We have to stop treating each other's protective armor as an attack. When we can see the fear behind the shield, the defensiveness loses its grip. We can start to drop the guard, not because we're invincible, but because we're choosing to risk being real with each other. That's where the bridge gets built, not in perfection, but in the shared courage to admit we're both doing our best in a world that makes connection hard. So, where do we actually begin? The research points to something quietly radical: steady consistency over grand gestures. We simply don't need to overhaul our lives overnight. We just need to show up, again and again, in ways that feel genuinely human. For men, that might mean naming the weight you're carrying instead of shouldering it in silence. For women, it might look like asking for space to process without immediately jumping to fix it. These aren't rigid gender rules, they're just two sides of the same coin. We're all learning how to lower the shields we built for protection. Start wonderfully small. An honest check-in text. Sitting through an awkward conversation without reaching for your phone. Letting someone see you stumble, and then letting them do the same. Vulnerability isn't a performance, it's a practice. And it thrives in community, not just in pairs. We've all felt that belonging isn't built in isolation. It's woven through repeated, low-stakes interactions with neighbors, coworkers, and friends. When we stop treating every interaction like a test we have to pass, we give each other room to breathe. This is a shared journey, not a clinical prescription. We're not here to diagnose or fix each other, but to walk alongside one another as we untangle years of defensive habits. If the weight feels too heavy to carry alone, please reach out to a licensed counselor or therapist who can provide the professional support you deserve. But for the everyday work of rebuilding trust, the path is simpler than we fear. It's found in the quiet moments where we choose curiosity over judgment and patience over proof. We stay. We listen. We try again tomorrow. That's how the distance closes. We began this conversation by asking why we pull away when our hearts are actually aching to be truly known. We can see the shape of the fracture, but the remedy lives in the daily choice to step toward each other instead of stepping back. Healing isn't about erasing the past or pretending the hurt never happened. It's about recognizing that the walls we've built were never meant to keep love out. They were built to keep us safe when we felt exposed. Now that we see what's really hurting, we can gently lower the drawbridge. For the men who've been told to carry it all in silence, and for the women who've been asked to hold it all together, the invitation is the same. Put the armor down for just a little while. You don't have to have it all figured out to begin again. You just have to be willing to show up as you are, messy and unpolished, and trust that the other person is doing the same. This channel was built on a simple promise, that we will never pit one half of the human experience against the other, and that every story we tell will point toward repair rather than retreat. We believe that understanding is a bridge, not a battleground. So when the next quiet moment comes, and the old instincts whisper to protect yourself by pulling away, pause. Take a slow breath before you reply. Remember that connection is a practice, not a performance. Reach out. Ask the question. Share the worry. Let the silence between you feel like space to grow instead of a gap to fear. We're walking this path together, learning how to hold both the truth of our pain and the quiet hope of our healing. And just so you know, this episode was carefully crafted through a steady partnership between human insight and artificial intelligence, woven together to serve you with clarity and care.